Hey everyone, today I've got Taylor with me and we're going to talk about how passive is print on demand. I think that's a big conversation topic, a big thing that people think they can kind of just set and forget, which is, certainly using something like Kittl, you can make some pretty amazing designs really fast. And we may talk about that later, but I think Taylor has an amazing story that can actually give you a really good idea of how much work goes into building this print on demand shop so that it can truly be passive and how you can set up to still see consistent growth. So Taylor, thank you so much for joining me. Why don't you start by giving kind of a just brief introduction of yourself and what you're doing on YouTube. You just recently kind of started your YouTube over the last year. It's starting to grow. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much, Drew, for having me on. I'm excited to be here. Hello, all. My name is Taylor. I started print on demand in October of 2022. So just in the later part of the year, in 2023, last year was really my first full year and really diving deep into growing my own print on demand shop. I'm very proud to say that 2023, I was able to completely replace my corporate 9 to 5 income. And just the beginning of this year, I went completely full time in
Wow.
my business. But I did put a lot of work into it. I talk about that on my channel, and I'm excited to dive into that here because I think it is a very important topic
Mm.
for anybody who's considering print on demand to really have a good understanding of.
Yeah. And what's really great about this most recent story that you have, having 2023 being your full year, being able to replace your corporate or industry job, just fuels my claim in a recent video I did claiming that print on demand is not oversaturated. So that's another thing that I constantly hear on our videos. Oh, this is just, this is why we can't make any sales, because YouTubers like you go and you talk about all the niches, and then all the niches are like, everybody, let's calm down for just a second. Taylor just started a shop in 2023 and has replaced her entire income. Come on, this is not oversaturated. I mean, the amount of online shoppers statistically has grown just insane since pre-COVID, honestly. So I think that you are a perfect case study for proving my claim in that video, which everybody, you go check that out. It's called The Brutal Truth About Print on Demand. I go into a bunch of things like that, but we're going to actually dissect some of those here in this conversation. So let's start with let's start with the age-old question. I feel like age-old is not the right term. It kind of feels that way. Print on demand's not that old, but it's more so just got trendy. I think print on demand was actually here for a long time, but it's trendy. But the age-old question, how passive is print on demand? Let's just start there, and you can give your perspective on the amount of work that you put in. So let's start there.
Yeah. So, well, let me start off by saying when I first learned about it, I did so much research. I was
Hmm.
just like many people probably watching this, I was watching every video online, any resource that I could find. And the one commonality that I felt I saw within any resource was you need to be consistent, you need to be listing. And so I identify as like an extremist. If I'm going to
Okay.
do something, I'm going to do it 100% or 200%. So I did just that. I would wake up early.
Mm.
I shared recently in a video on my channel, sometimes I would wake up at as early as 4 in the morning, which
Wow.
sounds crazy.
It does.
And it absolutely is, but that's what worked for me. I'm not a
Mm.
night owl. So I would get up, I would work on my shop, and then I would go to work and go to my job. But that does shift with time. So I would say that I was able to spend that time in the beginning and I really laid a good foundation, which I think getting started with print on demand is a good expectation to have, that there will be a lot of initial effort. And also, depending on each individual's learning ability, I was not a designer. I was not
Mm.
necessarily what
Okay.
I would call creative. And so that was a whole learning aspect to it as well. So that probably took me a little bit longer, whereas other parts might have clicked a little bit faster, and it differs for everybody. But I really probably was spending 20 to 30 hours additional each week on top of my job to build that core. Um,
Mm.
but
Okay.
I will say, to kind of show where it does shift is once you do get some momentum, it can be a lot more passive in that
Right.
regard.
Right. Yeah, but at least in the beginning, it sounds more of a proper part-time job, at least. I mean,
Yeah.
essentially, it is working two jobs. And I feel like, the print on demand dream, as you've progressed in your shop over 2023, is the ideal to take the place of what you're doing, whether that be a job that you don't like, or multiple side jobs, or multiple part-time jobs that you have to do to accumulate enough income to pay your bills and stuff. And print on demand can allow you to do one thing consistently for a long time. However, it does in fact become a part-time job. And what's really nice about how you put it was, like, for you, you weren't a designer, okay? So, but you may have other, background, or marketing, or research, or SEO kind of knowledge to help you with that. So, okay, so that wasn't very intense for you. That was easier or something. And it could be the reverse for someone like, me or somebody else that's a designer. That part could come really fast and really easy, but it's all the other stuff that you have to go and learn first, and figure out what provider you're going to use, and figure out, are you going to do Shopify? Are you going to do Etsy? Okay, you're going to do Etsy. Great. Do you know all the things that go along in the back end to upload? Personally for me, it takes forever for me to do my listings, because I'm what I think you said, extremist or whatever. I'm also that kind of perfectionist where I want very beefy, bulky descriptions that tell a story, and I want 8 to 10 images that are beautiful, and so all this stuff. So that can take a lot of time. So if I ask, you know, as we're thinking about getting started with print on demand, you mentioned, of course, research was first. You did a lot of research. You did a lot of digging before you wanted to start with this. If we can give some people, maybe before we dive into the details, maybe we can give some people more a realistic timeline. So walk us through you starting your shop post research. Okay, so you've started it, whatever you're doing. Maybe you can tell us what you were using to design with, which provider you were using, Printify, Printful, whatever, and how long it was before you actually said, okay, I'm actually don't need my full-time job anymore. Maybe you can just kind of give us the timeline. I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah. So I didn't do a ton of research before I dove in. I kind of did research as I was in it.
Mm.
But what that looked like, I actually saw a random TikTok video that was talking about print on demand and the concept, and somebody was saying, "Oh, here's how you can make thousands of dollars, super
Was
quick."
it was
And
it was it Heather?
I have no idea who it
Okay.
was.
No, Heather's great.
But
Heather's
it
a phenomenal teacher.
yeah. And so it's funny because I think I've always seen those little kind of like gimmicks for how you can make
Mm,
money quick online.
mm,
This
mm,
was the first one that I ever saw that I thought, wow, that actually seems feasible. The wheels
okay.
were turning. It seemed like it made sense.
Hmm.
And so at the time, I did not have a computer or anything like
Oh,
that. I
wow.
had like my
Okay.
corporate issued laptop, but I couldn't use that
Oh,
for my personal use. So I actually went on Amazon and I just primed a iPad to my house because I was like, you know
oh
what, I
my
need to
gosh.
have a
Wow.
creative
Okay.
aspect, and I liked the idea of being able to like draw and things like that on
Hmm.
an
Hmm. Hmm.
iPad. So I primed one to my house, and then literally the next day I'm sitting at my kitchen table. My husband, who was my fiance at the time, was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm starting a business."
I'm sorry.
But that I was just attracted to it right off the get go. And like I mentioned,
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
husband was my fiance at the time, so we were
Hmm.
planning a wedding, which
Hmm.
in the United States is very expensive. So the
Oh yeah.
idea making some type of side income. I didn't necessarily have the goal right away that it would be this full time thing, but the idea of just an extra $100, $500 a month
Oh yeah.
sounded
Oh yeah.
really appealing. So I would say it was around February though. So October to February, about 4 months, 3, 4 months
So
is
October 2022 to February 2023. Is that what?
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
That is where I started seeing over $1,000 profit each
Wow.
month.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's where in my head, I started to kind of think, okay, I need to make sure I'm set up properly for taxes at the end of the year. And I think I should start treating this like it's actually a business and not just a hobby that bought my iPad
Wow. Wow.
to
Yeah.
work on.
Wow.
So that is where I kind of had like a little bit of a change. It's where I became a business. I got business accounts and a business credit card to make it all legit in that way.
Mm,
And
mm.
by May is where I actually went away for a work trip. And during that work trip, I made my salary in the same week that I was away.
No way. That is
Yeah.
incredible. Wow.
And so that was my first time really taking a step away from my shop, because at this point I had been really listing consistently. Like I mentioned earlier, I was spending a lot of time waking up early, but I didn't have the ability to do that while I was away traveling for work. I was very busy, and I was also with people constantly. And so that shifted the perspective even more to,
Mm,
wow, this could
mm.
not just be an extra $100, $500 a month to help, with little things here and there, but I think I could actually make something out of this. And
Yes.
so at that point I was committed.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So we're talking five. I mean, the better part of 7 to 8 months
Yes.
is what was like, oh shoot, okay, I can just leave this full time.
Yeah. And I didn't leave then. So I
Oh,
it took,
okay.
yeah, I didn't leave. That's where I had the thought.
But
And
you're
then
saying that what I'm saying is that it was an actualization that you
yes.
could make the same amount is
Yeah.
that was where the threshold was after months of dedicated hard work, and we can maybe get into a little bit of that in a minute. But there's a couple of things that you mentioned that I want to just briefly touch on that I think is important for people. Maybe if I can remember, I'm going to cut this as a short clip. You um you said that you saw this TikTok, okay, and you were drawn to it for multiple reasons. One was it made sense to you. You said, okay, this is actually plausible. That's really interesting because I think that we've seen perhaps a slight shift in mindset. Like I mentioned earlier, people thinking it's oversaturated. Like, oh, that's crap. Like you said, a gimmick or something like that. But for you, you said it was actually plausible because you could see the dedication behind it and the clear steps to take to make money with print on demand. So, but then you also, I feel like that's attached to some sort of passion. If and this is something I talked about with Ryan. I don't know if you know who Ryan Hogue is, another fantastic collaborator of ours. I talked with him a little bit about passion and how that's connected, which can actually make you want to work hard at it. And then another thing you said I want to touch on is you waking up at 4. That's directly correlated to my friend Dustin I had on a couple weeks ago. He's the CEO founder of Retro Supply Co. Doing the exact same thing. The only difference here is you were doing print on demand, he was doing creative market products, digital products. He was getting up at 4, getting his stuff together, going to a coffee shop, working till about 8:30, going to his full-time job, coming home, doing family stuff because he had a kid and stuff. Next morning, 4, and he was doing a product each week. Now it's a little bit different because with, he's creating clip art and brush packs and things that take a little bit longer than just listing a print on demand product. But there's such a strong correlation there between three things. This is plausible and realistic. I can make money with this. Uh, 2, I have a passion for this thing, which leads into 3, I'm committed and I'm willing to get up and sacrifice sleep to do this thing. Does that, I
Yeah.
mean, you tell me. I want maybe hear a little bit about what you think about the passion correlated to this. Like, there was something that inspired you enough to get up that early and to consistently list. Like, what, like, yeah, what is, where's the passion correlate? It has to be there. If it wasn't, I mean, I don't think it would be as successful as it is.
Yeah. I don't know if I could pin it on one specific thing.
Mm,
I think I was just so intrigued by it. Because like I said, it seems so plausible in the sense of there's tons of ways to make money online,
mm,
but a lot of the ones that I had seen TikToks or videos about before, they always seemed very reliant on some other correlation, like something outside of my control,
Mm,
where print on demand felt very in my control. And in the regard of, I knew that I wasn't necessarily going to see a ton of success right away. I completely eliminated that expectation. But
mm, mm.
I knew that I think in life, anything that you work at for long enough, you will be successful at. Just most people quit before they get to that point. It's like if
The
I woke up
magic
tomorrow and
moment,
said,
right? Yeah, the magic
yeah,
moment.
I could say tomorrow I'm going to learn how to do a backflip, and it probably is not going to take me not even the day, week, 6 months, 7 months. It's probably going to take me years, honestly, because that would take a lot. But if I really committed to it, I could probably do it, just like anybody could, and
Yeah.
that's how I felt print on demand was. I was like, I'm just going to get it. So maybe that was the passion, now that I'm kind of outlining it in
Mm,
my
mm.
brain.
Yeah. Okay. But there's also one other really important uh key point here. So maybe there's four instead of three. The fourth one is expectation.
Mm,
So, and I talked with Ryan about this as well in our interview, is this expectation going in with not really great morals. Morals, maybe not the great. It's not the best word for it, but really like the goals. Like the goals for going into this are actually not aligned with the passion, and so then it directly affects like the shop. I think so. Yours were aligned, and you also had the expectation that you said, "Oh, a couple $100 a month would be awesome," and that's how I felt with my YouTube channel.
right.
That's how I feel right now with my creative market and my Amazon affiliate sales. Like, a little bit all added together is quite a substantial amount of money. So, but if you go into that like, oh, I'm going to do YouTube because a couple extra $100 a month would be pretty sick, or I'm going to do print on demand because $100, $200, $300 a month would really help offset this thing. And so you going into that with that expectation, but still putting that amount of work into it, I think is what actually made this super successful for you. So can you? I think this is probably where a lot of people struggle is unmet expectations because perhaps their outlook on it is too high or it's just not aligned right. And what I mean by that is you have some videos on, should I do a general shop? Should I do a niche? Should I just put 1,000 listings up? Should I put 10 up that are really focused? And, we could get into that. But can you maybe talk about how your mind was in setting expectations? Because I think that would be really useful and beneficial to help people get their minds straight before they embark on this journey.
Yeah. So I have a rule with myself that if I'm setting a goal for anything, I try to set SMART goals. And SMART is actually an acronym. It's shared, I forget who created the concept, but it's something that's specific, measurable, attainable, relative, and timely. And
Wow.
so,
Okay.
kind of making sure that you're hitting all of those different components when setting a goal, but also creating goals that are within your control.
Mm,
So,
mm,
for example, with print on demand and Etsy specifically, I never set a goal of I'm going to get 100 sales by this date because that
mm.
was out of my control. Instead, I
Okay.
focused on more so the actions that would get me there. So, I set a lot of goals like how many listings can I realistically put out in a week?
Mm,
And
mm.
those are something that I can control that will lead me to that 100 sale mark that I'm aspiring for when I first started.
Nice.
But I think you set yourself up for disappointment. I know I would set myself up for disappointment if I said, oh, I'm going to hit 100 sales by this date, and then I didn't. That would leave me feeling defeated. And so I think the shift in just what you can control can be greatly impactful because then you feel like you're actually making moves. You feel like you have something tangible that you can hold on to, that you worked on. And I think that gratification keeps you going. But
Yeah.
that's me.
Yeah. I think that's really valid advice for shifting the objective to the thing you can do or the thing you can complete that will bring you closer to the final goal. So I 100% think that this is where people start to fall apart and get discouraged is doing exactly what you said. In 3 months, I want to quit my full time job and I want to make sure that I've made $100,000 in 3 months with print on demand. Okay, wrong goal, I think, right?
Mhm.
Right.
It's a
The
cool
task
goal, but
that
realistic.
can be that can be the main goal, right? Let's say that
Right.
that is the main goal, right? But underneath that, you have these key results, right, that will drive you closer to your main objective. This is, I mean, it's like you said, you have to think about this like a business as
Mhm.
opposed to some get rich quick scheme. It can be. I mean, in all, you know, terms and purposes, that you have been very successful in a relatively short amount of time. But the amount of work that went into that was, I mean, extraneous work, like a lot of extra work on top of doing what you were doing full time. And so, like, saying my objective one for this week is get everything set up. Awesome. And if I have spare time, I'm going to start designing stuff. My goal for this week is 10 listings. Can I do 10 listings? Like you said, what is so the goal is not can I make 100 sales this week? The goal is can I list this many listings? Okay, and then the next goal is how can I optimize those listings? So the objective is actually working on the business, and then that leads you to whatever your north star is. Let's say it's $100,000, whatever it is. The thing you have to have the things that lead to that, and this may be common knowledge, and people will be like, well, yeah, duh, like I have to have a print on demand shop and I have to upload listings. Yeah, but you didn't make goals for any of those, right? You didn't make goals to figure out what products you're going to sell. You didn't make goals to say what kind of designs you're going to do. You didn't make goals to say how many listings you're right. And so I think if those are the goals, they all lead to the North Star goal. Does that kind of sound similar to how you approached it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times I even simplified the listing goal in itself of, okay, well, what goes into a listing? Well, I have to do research. So maybe it's even setting a goal of, okay, on Monday, every single week, I'm going to make sure I devote 15 to 20 minutes just to doing research. That's something
Mm.
that's within my control. And I think that's something that a lot of people can benefit from as well.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. And there's there's some amount of math we could do here to figure out how many hours it took you to become successful in this, right? But that, you can do that at home for whatever, how many weeks it was times, let's say 25 hours a week, plus maybe some stuff on the weekends and whatever, and then you could expedite some of that if you have an actual computer. You were doing it on an iPad, which is, has its limitations to a degree. So, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, you can expedite some of that process. So maybe if we get into a little bit more of the detailed stuff here, because I'm sure people at this point are wondering, like, okay, you've given me a realistic timeline. Okay, perhaps I believe you. Print on Demand's not oversaturated. Clearly, Taylor's done it and it's successful in the last year. This is actually insane to me. So perhaps we can get into some of the details because people are saying, like, okay, well, how did you do that? Obviously, first you started with research, but maybe if you can, the same way you kind of laid out how you built the expectations in your head for the shop, which is honestly kind of step number one. What's the expectation for what you're about to do? Are you going to quit your full time job and absolutely go crazy on a print on demand shop? You'll probably be successful. Or is it a hobby, or is it to make some side income like what yours was? If you can kind of walk us through the most practical steps, including maybe a little bit, we don't have to focus the entire conversation on this, but maybe a little bit in how you determined or decided your niche. That's another big thing that people struggle with. And I did a full kind of like 15-minute video on that. Like, how do you find your niche? What is that niche? So you guys can check out that video as well. But if you can walk us through the practical steps that set you up for success. So we talked about mindset a little bit. We talked about expectations. But now there are these practical things that we can start putting hours to, like you said, research, listing, mockups, probably, designs, print provider, all this stuff. Like, what would you, yeah, where would you kind of guide someone? I know you have some free resources I can link down below for people, but where would you guide someone through this process, including um, finding out what they want to sell, which I think is correlated to passion. But yeah, why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah. So Naturally, and I think I say this is naturally because I think most people go this route as well, but I started by just chasing holidays. I think
Okay.
that's the quickest and easiest type of approach that most people have. And I was starting in Q4 of 2022. So my first thought process was, all right, Christmas.
Mm,
What can I do for Christmas? Because I think if I'm going to see a surge, this would be the time to do it when I was first starting my shop. So that's what I started off with. And I saw some success with it. I started seeing sales and started seeing daily sales during that time frame. But then my to continue that success, I kept thinking, okay, January, my shop's going to die. It's
mm,
not going to
mm.
sell
Yeah.
anything because all I
Right.
have is this seasonal type shop. And so I need to start thinking forward. And so I started thinking of Valentine's Day and St. Patrick's Day and
Mm,
just chasing those
nice. Yep.
holidays. And that worked to some extent, but I will say that it was very, it led to a lot of burnout. I felt like I was on a
Okay.
hamster wheel where I was just constantly changing. Okay, what's next? What's next? And, I had the calendar of all of this crazy little holidays that you don't even know of, just so that I could think of anything that I could tap into. But I will say that what I recommend and kind of where I shifted to later to make it feel a little bit more passive was where I started sprinkling in evergreens. So
Right.
generally now I kind of recommend having a little bit of a split, but also the evergreens that I create, if I'm creating something seasonal, I try to make it something that complements the evergreen. So, for example, if I had something in relation to Christmas now, it would complement an evergreen that I already see results with. And so it's not just saying Merry Christmas, it's something that ties into that. And I think that's where I made a lot of mistakes with a lot of my early designs and just
Mm,
making those very traditional holiday type designs because that's the first thing that I thought of.
yeah. And so were those okay? So that's I mean that's a good starting place, especially if someone doesn't have any ideas. They holidays are a good one. Now they're a bit uh you know ephemeral towards the time, right? So they come and go really fast, right? So it's not like you're making sales probably not the week of the holiday, right? Because they need their item a lot faster than that. So and then of course your point about starting or sprinkling in the evergreen, did you already have a design style in mind, or did you have to kind of do some soul searching and find that? Or because yeah, I mean, and to be fair, anyone can go and like just put some nice script type on a sweater that says Merry Christmas. I don't think that that would probably get as many sales as something that is more specific or niche to a design style. But where did that kind of come from and grow for you? Or did you just say, I'm going to put Merry Christmas on a sweater?
At first, that's definitely what I did,
Okay.
but I I definitely didn't have any type of specific go-to design style. I
Mm-hmm.
was just spending a lot of time looking at what other types of bestsellers looked like and
Okay.
trying to just connect the dots of okay, well, what elements can I pull out of this? Like how do they have the text? Is it text at the bottom and a graphic in the middle? Is it just text and then a graphic? Is it just text? Is it left
Mm,
aligned? Is it centered?
mm,
And trying to pinpoint all of those types of things. At this time, I probably wasn't thinking like that. I probably wasn't like, oh, that's left aligned text and it's this
sure.
type of font. But I could look and see, okay, this is blocky and it's centered and try to kind of go and create my own unique way of that in different niches that haven't seen that design style. I also found a lot of inspiration with design through Pinterest and not
Mm,
even on the specific product or product types that I was targeting. I would find inspiration on anything. It could
okay.
be just random graphics and, wall art or something like that that I
Mm,
saw. And I would just say, oh, I like those colors together and think how I could bring that to a design.
okay. Yeah, that's good. And I think that noticing these things, right? This text is here, it's this kind of font, the graphics centered, and it looks like a big rectangle, right? And it has sales, right? So you're looking at shops that has sales, right? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get proof of concept, right? And that's research, right? And so that's That's of course step one, pretty much for anything. I mean, you reverse engineer. This is the goal. I want to have something that is like these shops that are successful. These are my exemplars, and I'm going to reverse engineer to figure out how that makes sense with me. I'm going to go look at inspiration from other things. Pinterest 100% is a great example. We love Pinterest. We do a lot of videos on Pinterest keywords and things like that. Now, how did you decide or iterate on how to stand out or be different from these competing shops or just bestseller shops? Because generally always the best advice that we get and share, from Sandra or Heather or whoever, is you're not trying to compete with the best selling shops because they're already there. So there's no point in that. You want to look at them and see what's making them successful and figure out how that works on your own, but you're not going to probably not very early rank with them. But at the same time, you also don't want to look like you're just copying them, because then you really won't win because their shop's already successful, right? So it's kind of a little dance you have to play. So where did you decide to be different, or how to stand out? Was it specific to the style that you were changing a little bit, or photography and mock-ups? Like, maybe you can give some people some advice for how to actually stand out, because I think that that's probably where also people struggle.
Yeah. So I work with multiple different print providers for
Okay.
the very reason that different print providers have different variations of products.
Sure.
And I think that's probably where I've been able to stand out the most, because tapping into a niche that, what might feel saturated, when you have something that does look different, it can catch the eye. There's
Okay.
a balance to that, because sometimes I think it's okay, well, let's use the mock-up that's already working. So we have the same mock-up and we create a completely unique, different design.
Mm.
For somebody who's never designed before, odds are, and this is how my first designs were, that it didn't look good. The
Okay.
unique, completely from scratch design that I whipped up, I had no design background. So it really wasn't the most aesthetically pleasing. I didn't really know what I was doing.
Mm.
But I could find very successful design styles in different niches, bring them to lesser saturated niches, and then offer it on a different variation of a product that isn't offered, because a lot of people are using the same print providers and offering the same colors and things like that. And it immediately catches attention. And then I think it is good to still use, I think right now, if somebody's selling apparel, I think most people get into apparel and they
Sure.
think of comfort colors, super
Sure.
trendy, super popular. And there's the classic pepper mock-up that everybody likes to use. It sees lots of click through. It's still good to maybe have something like that in your remaining listing images, because it's kind of like a second form of validation for the customer. They see something that stands out, they click on it. They also see that mock-up that they're really liking on other listings on the main
Mhm.
page, and you've already earned the click. So
Okay.
it really helps to
Sure.
boost the listing. But you can do that with tons of different product types too.
Okay. And so that's a really interesting point to talk through, because it's interesting that you said that first. I thought you were going to say something different, but you already went immediately to different print providers have different things, which is 100% true. And also another point of contention for users that get overwhelmed with the amount of things that they have to do. So what does that mean exactly when you brought that up? Do you mean making a similar design to these shops that are doing well, but putting it on like a coaster or like a ice bucket or a different or yeah. So what do you think about that? Like the different kind of products, and I mean, clearly you have some expertise in knowing what providers provide, and the differences. Like, for example, it can be very irritating that Printful and Printify have the same exact shirt, but both of them have different colors, like for whatever reason. So what do you think about the products side of it, because it can be overwhelming, and what suggestions do you have, and maybe just what worked for you?
Yeah, so I go as simple as just the different colors. So, like you mentioned, different companies will have different colors,
Mm,
especially when it comes to comfort colors is super popular.
sure, sure.
And there are tons of shades. I recently learned, I was on Amazon looking at comfort colors at wholesale.
Oh,
And
okay.
so they have more than what I ever even imagined as far as colors. And
More
so
than the print providers?
yes, they have
Really?
tons of color variations. Yes,
Hmm.
different shades, all types of different stuff. And
Okay.
so I think that a lot of sellers who, just for that specific product type as an example, but again, the same methodology could be applied to different product types. But if you have the same core five colors as everybody else, and then you decide to change up your listing, and then maybe you have a lilac, like a light purple
Yeah.
Comfort Colors brand shirt, and you stand out, it's still a very attractive color shirt. And of course, you want to make sure it's in line with maybe the niche, right? So maybe a ivory shirt that I know is very common mock-up with Comfort Colors
Hmm.
has a purple text. Maybe you flip it and you have the
Hmm.
purple shirt with more,
The
maybe the
ivory.
later colored text, right? So it's, you're standing out in a different way, and being able to browse around different print providers can really help with that. Just changing the color, that could be done with mugs as well. If it's a white mug, everybody offers a white mug. What about a black mug?
Mm.
You know, or different things like that.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So it's not necessarily always like you have to sell tumblers instead of shirts. It's
Yeah.
I did my extensive research, and another one I see, for example, is the sand color. Right? It's such an awesome color for Comfort Colors and Bella Canvas and whatever is the sand tan color.
Hmm.
But it's like, okay, I did my research, but there's also all this other like super muted retro teal color that's like awesome, and no one is selling that, and so I'm going to target that one specific uh iteration of a product type. So it doesn't always have to be like, well, everybody's selling t-shirts, so I have to sell coasters now, right?
Right.
Like it doesn't always have to be that. Now, but let me ask you, in relation to different products, where did that work for you as well? Did you have you experimented, and some of this is just my own ignorance from not having watched a ton of your videos yet, but did you find success iterating on other product types, and maybe you can give some advice on the type of product types that still make sense and correlate with the niche that you're selling, instead of, and then this kind of gets into like, do you have a general store of just random crap, or do you have like a catered store that's like kind of looks like it fits together, right? And I think the latter will set you up for more repeat buyers. But anyway, can you tell us some success you've had around iterating on different products, and or have you just stuck to apparel? Like what's that process been like for you?
Yeah, I've definitely tested out tons of different things. The first thing that, and also what I would consider the easiest thing to transition to if you are selling
Hmm,
apparel, and as I started with apparel,
okay.
is to go to tote bags.
Oh,
Um,
I thought you were going to say mugs.
no, yeah, no,
Tote
no.
bags. Okay.
Mugs are
Okay.
good too, but I felt that tote bags were something that really complemented, and it can complement a lot of really good
Hmm.
evergreen niches, and it's a really low cost item that makes a great gift, just like a mug
Oh,
too.
okay. Okay. Yeah.
But so something that I think really helped me out in my shop is in getting multiple sales per order was when I added different products that already were complementing the existing niches and products that I had. And so the first thing that I did was tote bags, and I started seeing people ordering 2 items or 3 items
Ooh, okay. Okay.
as a result.
Yeah,
So
complimentary items. Yeah.
yep. And I found with tote bags, because I was doing apparel and the shape of a tote bag is kind of like a shirt in a way, it's, rectangular and long. So a lot of the designs were really easy to just put on a tote bag without
Hmm.
having to rework or do anything extensive. So for sake of time, which I didn't have a ton of, it made it really easy to create more listings with things that are already working.
Yeah. And did you ever at any point see the tote bags start to sell more or as much as your other apparel items, or was it always one type of product that was reigning supreme, or did like the tote bags kind of sneak up and take over? Like what, or were they just supplemental? Like you noticed like people were coming to my shop for this thing, but then they kind of saw the same thing on a tote bag and they said, oh, okay, I'll just take that too. Like what, How did that, or did the tote bags, like I said, kind of start to rank on their own for themselves? Like, what did you kind of see from that process?
I mean, I would say it's a little bit of a mix. Apparel has always stayed number one, and I
Okay.
think it always will. I to go back to the question that everybody asks of, is it oversaturated and whatnot. I personally don't think apparel will ever be oversaturated, just because people always are going to wear clothes,
Hmm.
hopefully,
Yep.
and
Hopefully.
also
Yep.
trends constantly are changing, so that
You
what
got my brother with that one. He's over here.
oh yeah, I mean, teach their own,
That was
but
pretty funny.
I what was selling on apparel, if you looked at Etsy historically 2 years ago, it's going to look different than what is selling right now. So I think that that is just an ever evolving thing that will happen. People are
Hmm.
always going to be creating new styles, new designs, and whatnot. But I will say, having additional products like tote bags, I felt like that almost became kind of like the bread and butter, the
Hmm.
consistent, where I could kind of always depend on it. It was always
Interesting.
there. And it, for a tote bag, what I personally love about tote bags is
Hmm.
they're very low production cost, but
Okay.
people will pay close to $20, $25 for a tote bag.
Really? Okay.
So
Okay. And you're
high
talking
profit
about
margin,
the standard kind of
just the cotton
printify
canvas
cotton
tote.
canvas. Yeah.
Yep.
Really? Okay. Okay.
So that was
Interesting.
really nice in that regard, because you will see lower margins on apparel. A typical, I mean, what I shoot for and what I typically see with apparel is around 30%. Certain variations are higher percentage, certain are lower.
Okay.
But the tote bag, it was a nice little kind of pick me up
Interesting.
to everything else. So, and it was very reliable. I wouldn't say that people only bought tote bags if they were buying apparel. I definitely
Yeah.
have had orders of just tote
Yeah.
bags, but those were, I will say, those are often my favorite. If I see somebody buying like 10 tote bags, because I'm like,
Oh,
woo,
wow.
that's great profit.
That's a good time, man. That's over.
Yeah.
That's several $100 right there. That's excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to ask specifically about tote bags. It is a little bit irritating that the print providers don't have the same kind of options often, because I think one of Printful's, best selling tote bags, and it's really nice, by the way, is just kind of expensive. It's like
Yeah.
the Eco Tote, but then you have Printify's like just cotton basic tote bag, and you can have both. I mean, you can have one for the luxury seller, and then you can have one for the everyday. Just, I mean, you can call it the everyday tote, but you have one that's a little bit stronger, it's a little bit more canvas. It's the eco-friendly one or whatever. Did you? I know this is kind of product specific now, but I think it's valid. Did you experiment with both, or
No.
did you kind of just okay? So you just went the cotton
Yeah,
route.
and the
Okay.
reason being is, so I am a very big believer in having high quality mock-ups. I think it is extremely important to have good mock-ups,
Okay.
and any type of product that I've ever considered adding to my shop, if I can't find great mock-ups for it, it's not worth my time. Just
Hmm.
because I started with not the greatest mock-ups and was
Yeah.
just using,
You use the stock ones from
yeah,
whatever provider, right? Yeah. Okay.
yeah, the conversion is just substantially different. So I just simply won't list a product if it doesn't have good mock-ups.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you, at your level that you're at now, are you still using your same mock-ups, or do you feel like you have the freedom to actually purchase the items and take more realistic photos of them? And have you tried that, and do they convert better?
I do not do that
Hmm.
for,
Okay.
I believe that time is money. And
Okay.
for what I know with my abilities, I know that me ordering the products, then having to probably rent a studio, because I don't have the best lighting in my
Hmm.
office.
Hmm.
I'd have
Okay.
to rent a studio space, have the lighting. I have a camera just because I do YouTube, but
Sure.
if somebody
Sure.
didn't have a camera, that would be an investment. I think that I can go on Etsy and buy a great mock-up for $3 and
Sure. Sure.
be listing products on it right then and there.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's totally valid. I just know that there was, of course, this whole mock-up drama that I'm sure
I
you
still
were
get
involved.
messages asking about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I talked with Scott pretty extensively over at Brand
Yeah,
Creators about this, and we kind of came to the agreement that obviously, or what I mean is, we both agreed on there's nothing wrong with using mock-ups so long as they adequately show the product
yeah,
you're using. But we also both agreed that if you can potentially make your own mock-ups, that's even better. So if
yeah,
you're selling, the example I gave in that video with him was, I have a Michaels, you know, 5 to 10 minutes down the store that has the Gildan heavyweight, and I can buy 5 colors for $2 a shirt, and I can take a picture with my iPhone, which is actually a pretty high quality camera, and give you a much more realistic expectation of what the color looks like, as long as the color matches what print for. Yeah, now that is a lot more work, obviously, but if you are a designer or design savvy, you actually create the work all up front for yourself, and then you don't have to do it again because now you've made your own kind of mock-ups, right?
yeah,
And I mean, it just takes a lot more work, of course. And so I have not personally tested that to see which way or the other it works best.
yeah,
I mean, there's a million mock-up subscriptions you could have where you can use Kittl mock-ups, so long as it so long as it is the same shirt you're selling. I mean, don't put a
yeah,
crop top on your listing if you're selling a Gildan heavyweight. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah,
yeah.
okay. So that's good about about how you view the mock-ups. Now let me ask you, um, and kind of rework back through the process that we've talked about so far, working from research to testing different products to adding products to your store. Um, Maybe the last thing we can kind of talk about in terms of the timeline, um, of you reaching success is another age old question, which is, how many listings do I have to put up? Now, I think this is relatively subjective because I have several Etsy shops, some of which I experiment for the sake of Kittl, some that I just have stuff that I like to sell, like digital products. One of the stores that's print on demand, I I I posted, I don't know, 15 in like a 2 week period, and I have 10 sales. So that's now that's not a lot of money, but I didn't post 100 listings. Let's be
Right.
honest. So I know the kind of key number that a lot of Etsy gurus or experts will say is, like, if you can get to 100, you have a lot of data you can work with, and I agree on that. Where I think that potentially is not worth your time is, I did the opposite. I was fully branded, fully committed to one thing. I listed 15 to 16 listings and already got sales. So maybe it's the same amount of time, though, because I really put a lot of thought and effort into what this one store is going to look like. Can you walk us through what worked for you, maybe what you learned, and where in the timeline the amount of listings you were putting? Because I think you were saying you were either listing every week or every day. I don't know what you said, but one of those things. What's the question is, what's the magic number? But what I want to get to is a better question. So what do you think? What do you think about that?
So I agree with there needs to be a certain level of quantity to some extent for, like you mentioned, for data. I
Okay,
believe there's a lot of
I agree.
really good information that you can see at your fingertips if you're really diving into your shop and looking at the numbers.
Hmm.
But to kind of caveat the number of 100, where that could get really misinterpreted is, okay, 100 listings and you have one Christmas listing, one professions shirt, one Valentine's, and
Ooh,
you have
yeah.
100
Okay.
listings that
Yeah,
are
yeah.
in 100 different areas. I think that is so broad
Mm.
that that's not really giving you data, because you don't know for sure if you would have been successful in that Christmas niche originally, because you
Okay.
only had one listing. Buying one lottery ticket isn't necessarily going to be the winner, right? You have to buy some more, and try a couple more times. And so I kind of have a rule of thumb. If I'm going to dive into a specific niche, I have to build it out. And so for me, what that means
Okay.
is building about 20 to 25 listings in that niche. And then I can really look at that group for data and say,
Okay.
okay, of these listings that I made in this niche, which have gotten any sales, if any, which have started to see some views, favorites, and then dissect those that are seeing any type of like tangible result. So, all right, everything that had this main mock-up image had the most views and favorites. That's something that maybe I'm going to carry into the
Mm,
next thing.
mm.
And then
Okay.
that's kind of how I would go about it. So, depending on how many niches you want to target, that could look different, right? If you're like, oh, I want to design for X, Y, and Z, then I would say if you have three different niches, you're probably going to want to try to get to about 75 listings to really build out each of those niches.
Now, the next question is going to, of course, be do those, what ties the store together? Do you just have a hodgepodge shop of different designs for different niches, or if I were to come to the store that's testing out three different niches, 25 products each, is there a cohesive theme that ties the shop together, or do I not be worried about that and I just design to the niche in whatever style, or am I keeping my core stylistic properties, my stylistic values, but incorporating that into the niche to see what works? I don't know if that makes sense,
Yeah,
but
no, that makes complete
okay,
sense.
okay, okay. Yeah.
Uh,
So, what do you think
I
about that?
I have a very strong viewpoint, I guess you could say, on
Mm,
this. I
mm.
think that you have to be and have an area of expertise in something, whether
Okay.
that is being very product specific. Maybe you become the expert in mugs, right?
Okay.
And
Okay.
you create listings for mugs and you're in a bunch of different niches. Again, still building out each one that you do tackle,
But it's all mugs.
but it's all mugs. And
Got
somebody,
it.
if somebody were to go to your shop, it feels very cohesive. And it's like, all right, this is the mug man
Store. The
or
mug
lady,
man.
right? And then the opposite. So I think if you're very multi passionate, that's a great route to go because you might have tons of different niches. You don't want to just pick one. That's a great option. Pick a product.
A
And then you can
product.
design all of those different niches, all of your different passions, and all of the different things that you've researched.
Okay.
If you want to go another route, I think the opposite would be being a little bit more niche specific. So, say you want to create a pet shop, and with that, you can then be the expert in pets and explore different product types. And you have that cohesive feel in that you are a pet shop,
Mm, mm,
if
mm.
that makes sense.
It does
So,
make sense.
I think that kind of picking a path in the beginning, I think is really important because I think in the world that we live in now, where we have all of these like fast fashion and really cheap marketplaces that exist, when you don't have some type of cohesive feel, you start to resemble a lot of those different marketplaces that exist.
Mm,
And
mm.
so that our eyes are now kind of trained to
Yep.
identify that
Yes.
as cheap, poor quality,
Mm.
and that we might not even get it in the mail. So a
Oh,
customer
yes.
is less likely to convert on that. So I think that's where it's really important to begin. But I will say, as my shop has grown, I think as a shop builds, you can get a little bit more messy
Hmm.
later down the line and like a little bit more random.
Hmm.
Um, it doesn't become as important, I think, once you have some momentum in your shop. But to get a good foundation and get the ball rolling, I think you need to have a path. You need to have a
Got it.
niche, a niche, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever you want to call it. Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah, I like that advice. I think that's good to pick whatever the entity is going to be. So you have product specific shop allows you to kind of go crazy a little bit because your guiding north star of that is I'm the mug man or I'm the tote queen or whatever you want to call it, or I'm I'm the botanical floral guy. And
Yeah.
I have mugs and tote bags and shirts and hats and whatever, but they're all going to be kind of lino cut style, botanical, vintage, whatever.
Right.
Or I'm the niche guru. This is all about pets. And I can perhaps have a lot of different styles because there are so many different kinds of pets,
Hmm.
different kinds of dogs, different kinds of whatever, so that you can have different art styles for all that. So those are three really good paths to try to follow, and that sets up users to have a really, what I don't want to say easier, better time, like creating their shop. Is okay, this is the path, I'm going to follow this path, and if I ever start to get off this path and stuff starts to not work, it's because I'm not following the right path. So that's really 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 good advice. Now, just the last thing, I want to give you the opportunity to tell everyone what you have going on, where they can follow you. Of course, I've got your YouTube link down in the description, but just give us and everyone watching uh, an update on what's going on with you. What are you going to be offering? What's coming up on the channel? You know, perhaps maybe you have some Kittl tutorials. I'm not. I don't actually know, but so what's coming up for you, and anything else you want to share? The floor is yours.
Yeah, so I would love for everybody to hop over to my YouTube channel, leave a comment. I try to read and respond to as many comments as possible, but it's just under Taylor POD. I'm also on Instagram, Taylor POD with the underscore at the end
Mm,
because the
mm.
other version was taken.
Oh man, that's the worst.
But yeah, I believe Drew, you mentioned earlier, I do have a lot of free resources on my
Yes,
website, so definitely check those out. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just creating
excellent.
videos, talking about print on demand, passive income. Um, yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Of course, go check out Taylor's channel. Subscribe to the Kittl channel if you haven't already. It'll take you just 1 second. Now, I want you guys to drop a comment if there's anything that you heard us discuss that you didn't quite understand, or if you may want us to go deeper in, or perhaps Taylor can make that kind of content for her channel. So if there's something that you didn't understand, need to learn more of, first of all, you might go to her channel and the answer might be there for you. But just let us know in the comments, and that gives us really, really great observations and data for how to best serve you all and give you the best content to pursue your dreams, make better products, make more money, all those kinds of things. So definitely drop a comment, subscribe to both our channels, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.